Would you rather have people love you or fear you? Sounds like the setup for a toxic relationship meme, doesn't it? But this is actually one of history's most famous political dilemmas, thanks to Niccolò Machiavelli, the man who gave us The Prince, arguably half the world's corporate training manuals, and basically invented the phrase, "I'm not here to make friends." Welcome to the Ponder Parlor, where we serve mind snacks to curious thinkers and turn dusty philosophical debates into fresh conversations that matter today. Today, we're diving into Machiavelli's big question. As a leader, is it better to be feared or loved? And don't think this is just about kings, presidents, or dictators. Leadership is everywhere, running a household, managing a workplace, even being the one in your friendship group who picks the restaurant. So, whether you're managing a team at work, raising kids, running a group chat, or just deciding who's in charge of the television remote, Machiavelli's question sneaks in. Sooner or later, you'll face the Machiavellian dilemma. Do you want respect or do you want warmth? Niccolò Machiavelli was a 16th century Italian thinker, diplomat, and writer. He lived in Florence during a time when politics was, let's say, messy, city, states, constantly at war, power struggles, betrayals, the whole lot. Picture Game of Thrones, but with less dragons. He worked for the Florentine Republic, saw governments rise and fall, was imprisoned, tortured, and eventually sidelined. Out of that chaos, Machiavelli wrote The Prince, his most famous work, essentially a how-to guide for rulers trying to stay in power. Forget fairy tales about noble kings. Machiavelli's advice was brutally practical, sometimes shocking and deeply cynical. This is where his most famous idea comes in. If you can't be both, it's safer to be feared than loved. So, why fear? Machiavelli saw human nature as unreliable. In his eyes, people are self-interested, fickle, and quick to betray if it benefits them. Love, he said, depends on loyalty, gratitude, and goodwill, things that evaporate the moment they clash with someone's personal advantage. But fear sticks. Fear motivates. Fear keeps people in line, because when consequences are on the line, suddenly people behave. Think of a strict teacher you once had. Maybe you hated their class, but you always did your homework. Why? Because you were afraid of the consequences. Meanwhile, the cool teacher, the one you loved, fun classes, sure. But admit it, sometimes the homework mysteriously didn't make it to your bag. Or picture work. A boss who rules by fear might make people double-check every email, every deadline, every task. Fear creates precision. But it comes at a cost. We'll get to that later. Machiavelli wasn't saying leaders should be cruel just for fun. His point was, when the chips are down, fear is more dependable than love. But love isn't weak, it's powerful, just in a different way. A loved leader inspires loyalty, trust, and admiration. When people feel respected, cared for, or inspired, they don't just do what's required, they often go beyond it. Think of figures like Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa, or even Oprah Winfrey 1.0. They weren't feared into leadership, they were followed because they were loved and respected. And because of that, their influence lasted longer than any fear-based reign could because it didn't come from punishment, but from inspiration. Love also builds resilience. People will stand by a loved leader in tough times, while they might abandon a feared leader the moment they see weakness. History is littered with feared rulers who were quickly overthrown once the fear cracked. Even in families, this shows up. Children raised with only fear might follow the rules, but often resent it later. Children raised with love but firm boundaries are more likely to grow into adults who carry respect for those values. So love may be fragile in the short term, but in the long run, it creates bonds fear never can. Fear might win battles, but love, it builds legacies. Here's the tricky bit. Machiavelli wasn't naive. He didn't dismiss love. He just thought it was risky to rely on it. Because humans, in his words, are ungrateful, fickle, liars, and deceivers. Cheerful guy, right? Love is a fair weather friend. People love you when it's easy, but when danger or personal interest enters the room, that love disappears. Fear, however, is like a security guard. It doesn't care about feelings, it just does its job. But here's the kicker. Machiavelli also warned leaders not to slide into hatred. Fear can be useful, but hatred is deadly. If people hate you, they'll conspire against you, revolt, or wait for your downfall. Think of sports coaches. A coach who's tough but respected will have players who give their all. But a coach who crosses into humiliation and cruelty, eventually the locker room turns against them. So, Machiavelli's golden rule: be feared enough to command respect, but never so feared you become hated. So how does all this Renaissance drama matter today? Let's bring it into modern life. 1. In the workplace, a fear-driven boss might get immediate results. Deadlines are hit, rules followed, but it breeds anxiety, high turnover, and quiet quitting. A loved boss builds loyalty, morale, and creativity, but risks being taken advantage of. We've all seen the nice manager whose kindness gets mistaken for weakness. The best leaders, they balance. They're approachable, but you know not to cross their boundaries. 2. In parenting, parents who lead by fear, constant punishment, and harsh discipline may raise obedient kids, but often anxious or resentful ones. Parents who lead only by love, endless indulgence, and no rules might raise children who expect the world to bend for them. Parents who mix love with firm boundaries raise kids who respect the rules because they understand them, not just fear them. 3. In pop culture and fiction, take Star Wars. Darth Vader, feared, powerful, but constantly betrayed. Even his own son rejected him. Yoda, loved and respected, so much so that even as a ghost, he still had influence. In The Godfather, Don Vito Corleone is both feared and loved. People respect him because he's fair, but they also fear crossing him. That balance makes him powerful. 4. In politics, modern leaders reflect this divide. Some rule through fear, surveillance, intimidation, crackdowns. They control but often collapse when the fear fades. Others rule through love, charisma, empathy, connection. They inspire movements that outlive them, but they risk being overthrown if they can't enforce authority. Machiavelli's dilemma plays out every day in boardrooms, classrooms, living rooms, and even on social media. So, what's the verdict? Is it better to be feared or loved? Machiavelli would say, if you can, be both. But if you must choose, choose fear, because fear is dependable. But in the modern world, we've learned something he might not have accounted for. Fear is effective, but it's short-term. It creates compliance, not commitment. It drives obedience, but not creativity. It silences, but it doesn't inspire. Love, on the other hand, is slower, more fragile, but it's the only path to lasting influence. Leaders who are loved, respected, and trusted may struggle with control in the short run, but in the long run, they create legacies. The secret may not be fear or love, but respect. Respect combines authority with admiration. It's the middle ground where people follow you willingly, but also take you seriously. So, earn respect, inspire trust. Be the leader people want to follow, and the leader they know better than to ignore. So, next time you're in a leadership role, whether you're a manager, a parent, a coach, or even just the one running movie night, ask yourself, are people following me because they love me or because they fear me? And here's the real kicker. Which would you prefer to live with? Fear might win you obedience. Love might win you loyalty. But respect, the sweet spot between the two, wins you both. Thanks for joining us in the Ponder Parlor. If you enjoyed this dive into Machiavelli's world, hit like and that subscribe button and turn on the bell notification so you don't miss the next philosophical puzzle turned life lesson. After all, whether you're here out of love for philosophy or just fear of missing out either way, we're glad you're here. See you in the next video.